Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the next team preview video. Thank you to those that have watched my first 3 videos I posted on my YouTube channel. And I'm going to keep this ball rolling with the next video as I preview the Houston Texans roster. As we head, well, some training camps are starting up right here in Tampa Bay. The Bucks are down the road practicing right now. So it's getting that time of the year. I'm getting so excited. Football's back. Hall of Fame games on August 5th. I know it's not a lot of action, but at least you can get juiced about there being some football on some live football, real football on your TV screen. And then I just looked it up right before I recorded because I was kind of curious how far away we are from the actual real football season. And we are well, it's a little earlier than that. I counted to Sunday. We are 7 weeks away from waking up on a Sunday morning like today, not having really nothing much to do, but instead we're going to have a full day of football to watch, and I just can't wait to get back to that. It's my favorite time of the year, which is football season. But let's go ahead and dive into this video. I'm going to go ahead and preview the Houston Texans roster. Let's just in case there's anybody watching this video and this is your first team preview video. As a heads up, basically what you're going to get from me is I'm going to preview the offense, look at all positions, and give my feelings on that offense and how I feel about them. Same thing with the defense, and then at the end I kind of give the whole team feeling. Now throughout this I give it a fantasy football twist, so I kind of give you my feelings as far as these players, if I'm trying to draft them or how I feel about them heading into this fantasy football season. And one last thing before I get into this, I'm also promoting the Prospect Encyclopedia. For those that are unaware, it's a new product that came out last year. It's an idea of Roy Countryman. You can go to allaccessfootball.com to pre-order it. There's a link in my on my YouTube banner on my personal page. You can click to go pre-order it. Basically, that book is all 32 teams. We came up with a top 22 list of prospects. They're from players from the last 3 draft classes. They have to have less than 12 career starts. So if you see anybody on these depth charts, on these little graphics that pull up throughout the video, if they have a star next to their name, that means they are in that book, and they got a nice little scouting report that you can read. I'm going to go ahead and dive in and take a look at the Houston Texans. Man, if there is a team that is basically a dumpster fire heading into the season, it's the Houston Texans, like by far. I'm not gonna go too much in depth as far as the legal aspect, but obviously they have a lot of questions surrounding their current franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson, if he's even going to be a Houston Texan going forward. They're in cap space hell, basically. They have what you'll see here in the next graphic that'll come up shortly. They have 4.9 million in cap space, and I looked it up for the future. They only have projected 2.2 million in cap space for next year, so that's not good for them. And they don't really have an overly talented roster. You'll see when I go into it, it's a good mixture of young. I don't know if it's a good mixture, but it's a mixture of young guys and a lot of older, aging veterans that are having diminishing talent go away from them. So it's kind of sets them up for a bad year right now as far as how I feel about them. Now they do have a new head coach in David Culley. I really honestly have no opinion of him. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt if I really don't know much about him. I know he was the wide receiver coach at Baltimore, but the wide receivers really haven't developed in Baltimore. But then when you hear people talk about him, they talk about his leadership, the guy he is, and he has high praise among the coaches in the NFL. But I'm not sure how that's going to translate into a head coaching position, especially when you're joining a team that's in turmoil, in a complete beginning part of a transition period of this Houston Texans franchise. I wish him the best, but honestly, it kind of feels like he's a bridge coach at this point, so where unless he gets some immediate production out of these guys in the next 2 to 3 years, man, I hate to say it, but it feels like they're just going to replace him before it's too late for him to turn things around. That's just usually how these things work in the NFL when coaches get in this type of situation. But you also got to understand there's only 32 jobs in the NFL, so if somebody's going to offer you a head coaching job, you got to take it. So I understand, especially because I know he's an older guy. I think he's in his mid 60s if I remember right. But I don't have no valid opinion. I don't have yes on the recent video with Robert Saleh. you have all that stuff out there about them. You kind of know who that guy is. I really don't know who this guy is, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and see if he can maybe turn things around in Houston. I already mentioned this, taking a look at this really quick. They only have $4.9 million in cap space. Now that number should change. I think it's only going to drop a little. Last night, after I finished this script for you guys, the Texans went and traded for Anthony Miller from the Chicago Bears, but I think he's on the final year of his rookie contract, so that shouldn't have much money. So maybe they have like $4.8 million in cap space. So they don't have much to work with, to go sign dudes or maybe go acquire a big name or anything like that. And if you look at their guys that are notable players entering a contract year, look at that top name, Justin Reed. Justin Reed is a very good safety in this league. He blew up his first 2 years. He kind of had, I think he had it banged up last year, kind of had a somewhat up and down year because he was playing through an injury. But as long as he's healthy, I think this kid could end up becoming a star of this franchise. But I don't know if they're going to be able to re-sign him because they don't really have much cap space to work with right now. Like I mentioned, 2022, they only have $2.2 million in projected cap space. Now, I did look at their contracts. There are a bunch of guys they can release after this next season and create cap space. Obviously, we'll have to see how the Deshaun Watson contract affects things if they trade him. But either way, that's a guy they need to keep. But if they might have to franchise tag him and figure that situation out. David Johnson, I'm gonna go into it and later in the video. He's entering the last year's contract. Totally don't expect a contract extension. They signed like 3 or 4 different running backs. They're obviously gonna let him play out his contract and let him leave after this year. Whitney Merciless, a longtime cornerstone of the Texans franchise. He's an older veteran. They got Charles Omenihu working behind him. Eventually will take over his role in this defense. So he's a guy I don't expect him to give a contract extension. Like I said, I don't think they will anybody before the season because they have no money. And he's actually a guy, I think, if he still has some juice in him, if a team's looking to help their defensive front at any point of the year, whether it's because of injury or maybe the play is not up to par, maybe Whitney Merciless can go get traded to maybe a playoff contender at some point this year. Then Jordan Akins is their current starting tight end, so I listed him there. He's also entering a contract year, so with him now taking over that starting role as the tight end, I'm sure he wants to put together a strong season so he'll get a payday after the year. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into the offensive preview. Now, so here's the weird thing. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. So I'm taking Deshaun Watson out of the picture, but I'm going to talk about him really quick, just in case he's able to play this year, just in case he gets traded and you may want to draft him. As far as his legal situation, from what I understand, it's still completely up in the air. There's some people that think that he could still play at the beginning of the year. I'm kind of on the line where if he is still battling this legal issue, which is more than likely, yes, he will be. He might have to be put on the commissioner's exempt list, so he won't be playing. Based on what I was looking at last night, it sounds like Deshaun Watson, regardless of his legal status, he does not plan on playing for the Texans at all. And it sounds like the Texans are kind of ready to move on from him as soon as the legal trouble is figured out. So I think they're going to kind of set up a thing where he can stay at home and not come to training camp and they won't find him, if I read that right last night. But we'll have to see how the situation plays out. But obviously, if Deshaun Watson is guilty of his crimes, he needs to be punished accordingly. He needs to be suspended accordingly. But if he is proven innocent in this, obviously he's a top 5 quarterback. He's a top 3 type of quarterback talent. But take a look at these stats that I pulled up from him. He is one of 8 quarterbacks in NFL history with a season of 45 plus passing yards, 30 plus touchdowns, and 10 or fewer interceptions. If you look at his stats since 2018, of course these stats are only among quarterbacks. He's got the 2nd most yards per attempt, 3rd most game-winning drives, 3rd most rushing yards, tied for the 3rd most comebacks, 4th most points per game, 4th best completion percentage, tied for the 4th most rushing touchdowns among quarterbacks, 5th best QBR, 5th best rushing yards per game, 6th most passing yards since 2018, 7th most passing touchdowns, and 8th most passing yards per touchdown. He's in the top 10 of multiple categories. This guy is unreal. He's a bona fide starting fantasy quarterback if he's going to play this year. For me, I like quarterbacks that I can plug in my lineup and I don't have to worry about them until the bye week. That's how I try to draft my quarterbacks. I do sometimes do the late round thing, but sometimes that can burn you. But Deshaun Watson's a guy I know if I draft him, he's going to play for me. He's going to be in my lineup every week, of course, based on if he's allowed to play this season. But yeah, so that's just my Deshaun Watson preview for you guys. So obviously, if he can play, I say go get him. But obviously, you got to see if he gets traded. This is an ongoing situation, which I'm sure at some point in the next month or so, I might have to do a Deshaun Watson video for you guys once some news does break about that. I'm going to go ahead and actually take a look at the Texans. Like I said, I'm assuming this team's not going to have Deshaun Watson for this season. Taking a look at their offense now, these projected starters, these are per Roy Countryman. He is the creator of the Prospect Encyclopedia, and you can follow him at Preacher Boy Roy. He's one of my really great friends, one of my best friends in this sports industry, this business, this dream chase we're all doing here. I've been able to had the pleasure of working with him the last 3 years. He's a brilliant scouting mind, so please go give him a follow. Now, I will give Roy a benefit. These are projected starters. We did these back in like beginning part of July. I think we had these turn in for the Prospect Encyclopedia. So obviously he does not have Anthony Miller. I do believe Anthony Miller can work his way into the starting lineup, who they acquired from the Chicago Bears last night. But let's go ahead and take a look at it. If you look at their quarterback situation, Tyrod Taylor, he's had the worst luck as a starting quarterback, so that means something may happen. And Davis Mills, their rookie quarterback they drafted this year, may have to slide in. I'm telling you, I don't really. I mean, I like Tyrod. He can get the job done, but he's not going to be a fantasy quarterback for you this year, especially within this offense. Same thing with Davis Mills. I mean, he's got some tools to be maybe a quality starting quarterback in this league. I view him more as a backup guy, but I can be proven wrong. But he's going to have a lot of work to do if he's going to do that this year. He's going to have to play against behind a line that you hope would improve. Same thing with Tyrod. Another stat listed up there for Deshaun Watson. He's the most sacked quarterback since 2018. So you're playing behind a bad offensive line with an aging running back group, and their wide receiver group's decent. I'll talk about here in a second, but as far as their quarterback play, I'm not having no high expectations. They're basically going to be game managers that are going to try to keep the offense on the field so they can keep their defense as fresh as possible. But either way, I would never draft Tyrod Taylor, and I would not draft Davis Mills if he would have won the job. He would have to actually prove it on the field during his rookie year before I would even consider picking him up off the waivers, which I don't think that's going to happen. Now, taking a look at their running backs, obviously I talked about David Johnson, but since then they signed like all these guys to one-year deals. Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay, and Rex Burkhead. And they have Scotty Phillips on there. I'm not sure. He's going to have to compete for the last part of the roster. We'll have to see who even makes the roster out of all these running backs. And I don't know how they're going to keep them all. A couple things, though, to note really quick on David Johnson and Mark Ingram. I'll pull up this one right here. A couple stats, like I mentioned in all my videos, I like to look at the stats from the last 3 seasons to see who's been productive. As far as David Johnson, he's been still sneakily an effective receiving back. He has the 3rd most yards per reception since 2018. He's got the 4th most receiving touchdowns among running backs. So keep in mind, most of these are among running back stats. He's tied for the 7th most reception yards per game, and he has the 9th most receiving yards since 2018. And then Mark Ingram, if you look at him really quick, he's got the 6th most yards per reception since 2018, and he's tied for the 7th most rushing yards per attempt. Now, as far as the running back group, I'm not drafting any of them. I'm a David Johnson fan. I was hoping he could bounce back his career in Houston. He kind of was looking good at the beginning of the last year, and then he just kind of was fiddled away, but so did that whole Houston Texans team. But they have so many guys between David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay, Rex Burkhead. I mean, it's going to be probably a running back by committee, which I don't want a part of. And I should have said this at the beginning of the part of this. I'm really not trying to have any part of the Texans roster on my team this year. To be quite honest, I do not want to have anything to do with this team as far as fantasy football. And then I'm gonna take a look at their wide receivers really quick. Now, Brandon Cooks, he's been traded all over the place. But whenever he is on the field, he is effective. He's a guy I've always liked. He's a really good route runner, and he's probably the only guy that is worthwhile drafting from the Houston Texans this year. My biggest concern is their quarterbacks, Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills. How effective are they going to be? Are they going to be able to push down the field? But if there's anything you maybe can bet on from this wide receiver group, and as far as fantasy, is you could probably bet on the fact that this Texans team is going to be one of those teams that are always playing catch up. So they're probably going to end up being forced to be in a pass heavy team. So maybe that does boost the value of somebody like Brandon Cooks. I think Brandon Cooks could be a good wide receiver 3 that can give you wide receiver 2 numbers. If not, maybe in wide receiver 1 numbers during certain weeks if he catches fire. He's done that throughout his whole career. My biggest concern is the quarterback that's throwing him the ball this year. But if there was a guy, I would take Brandon Cooks. Randall Cobb's just an older, aging veteran in the slot. I don't expect him to become a fancy value. Nico Collins, he could be a fun rookie for you, but I don't expect him to be dominating targets, so I don't really think he's going to have any effectiveness in fantasy this year. And then, like I mentioned, they acquired Anthony Miller. That's the one I'm keeping my eye on. I do feel bad for the kid because he had poor quarterback play up there in Chicago, and now he's going to have to deal with poor quarterback play in Houston. If there were any way that the Texans and Deshaun Watson were able to work things out and he were to play for the Texans this year, let me just say that really quick. If Deshaun Watson were to play, I would consider David Johnson at the back end of the draft. I'll say that just because of his receiving ability. I would definitely consider Brandon Cooks at that point. And then I wouldn't draft anybody else, but I would keep my eye on Anthony Miller and see how his role would evolve at the beginning of the season. But as of right now, I'm not trying to draft any wide receivers out of the Texans unless it's Brandon Cooks, just because I maybe like the value where he is at when I'm ready to select him. He's the only guy I would consider doing that for. Then you take a look at their tight end. I already brought up Jordan Akins. This is another tight end group you can argue is one of the worst tight end groups in the NFL. But they do have some promise. I mean, I know Khalil Waring's a guy, and a young guy who came out of the draft last year. I know a couple people I actually like Brevin Jordan out of Miami. So if there is a guy I'm going to watch to see if he maybe emerges as a fantasy relevant tight end, it is Brevin Jordan. The rookie, I think he went in the 4th or 5th round last year. I did like his tape from Miami. And here's an interesting stat on Ryan Izzo. He's a tight end from the New England Patriots that they traded for back in March. Since 2018, among tight ends, this is among tight ends. He's got the most yards per reception at 16.4. But I'm not expecting Houston to release the Ryan Izzo experiment this year at all. So I have very low expectations for their tight end group. As you can tell, guys, I have very low expectations for this whole Houston Texans team. And as far as their offensive line, though, if you want to take a look at that, Laramie Tunsil, one of the top left tackles in the league. Max Sharping is coming on as a guard. They got a couple older guys. I'm not just saying they're terrible, but average guys are Justin Britton, Lane Taylor, and then Titus Howard, former first-round pick, has had his ups and downs in his career, but he's continuing to get better. I will say, this line should be a little bit better than last year and the previous years. I just don't expect them to be a dominant group where they're either, they're at least getting rushing yards or protecting the quarterback. This is going to be a unit that's going to struggle throughout the year and probably give up some sacks at times, but it should be a little bit better play from their offensive line from previous years. As a whole, though, you take Deshaun Watson out of this offense, it's going to be an ugly unit. Just to be very blunt, it's an ugly unit without Deshaun Watson. This is going to be it's a game management unit that you hope doesn't turn the ball over and at least can keep your defense fresh for most of the game, and they find ways to score throughout the game. But I think they're going to struggle when they get to the red zone, even if they do move the ball. Taking a look at the defense, again, these are projected starters from my boy Roy Countryman. Follow him at Preacher Boy Roy. As far as their defense, when you take a look at it, they got like some. It's a mixture of some good young guys, and then they got some older, aging veterans. I mean, they can be. I guess this is gonna be definitely a competitive defense if they can all stay healthy. Obviously, I talked about Whitney Merciless. He's an older guy. You know, one of the longtime pillars of the Texans franchise. Ross Blacklock is a he's a good D. He can be a good D tackle. It sounds like he had some growing pains as a rookie last year. We'll see if he can emerge. Shaq Lawson can, of course, get after the quarterback, but there is a concern that Miami shipped him away after 1 year there. So you wonder what's going on behind the scenes with Shaq Lawson. But I mean, and then I also I'm a big fan of Charles Omenihu, who will be working in the rotation, if not win a starting job in training camp. So he's a guy to watch on. He'll be the future part of He'll be a future cornerstone of their line, I believe. But I mean, they have enough, but I think they kind of lack some juice to be a consistent defensive line that's getting pressure after the quarterback. So I can definitely see quarterbacks behind a decent line to have enough time to throw the ball and pick them apart through the air. As far as their linebacker core, they brought in two veterans in Neville Hewitt and Christian Kirksey. Kirksey I've always liked, but he can never really stay healthy. And more than likely, that means that probably will continue with his tenure in Houston. Neville Hewitt's a guy he's a pretty good linebacker as far as getting all over the field to make those tackles. Same thing with Zach Cunningham. He's one of the bright spots on their defense. Actually, he has the most solo tackles in the NFL since 2018 with 278. I would say it's an average linebacker group, but you gotta hope that those guys are gonna stay healthy, because if they don't, they don't really have much serious depth in this among all aspects of their defense. They lack depth, so that's a major concern if injuries start to happen. Their secondary, I think they definitely got some pieces where they can make it interesting. Like I already talked up Justin Reed. I'm a big fan of his game. Bradley Roby's a pretty good cornerback in this league. They'll have to figure out their other cornerback position. Roy's got him projected for Terrence Mitchell, but they also got some guys that can maybe compete for that job or be in the rotation. And then Lonnie Johnson's a guy. He's translated to the safety position, so he's still trying to learn that, and we'll have to see if he can develop into a starting safety in this league. And then Desmond King's a guy I've always liked his game, even though he's getting older, but he's a very good nickel cornerback. So, I mean, they got some good veteran guys in here. Maybe they can lift up the younger guys. I think it's a good. If I were to pick which unit I like, the offense or the defense, I like the defense a lot better. But my biggest concern with the Houston Texans defense, though, is their depth. If injuries start to hurt this defense, it's going to definitely pile up on them early, and they're going to get picked apart then. And then also, too, if that offense does struggle to stay on this field, I don't know if I trust this defense be able to have the conditioning to keep up, and they'll be tired by the time it gets to that late third quarter, fourth quarter range, and then teams will start to run all over them because of the lack of depth they have to be in the rotation. So not a defense I'm a big fan of overall, but if I do like their defense more than their offense as of right now. And as far as streaming them, maybe in the right matchup, they do have the Jags week 1. I can definitely understand maybe rolling the dice that they can take advantage of Trevor Lawrence in his first NFL start, because sometimes those things don't go their way. I'll point to Andrew Luck's first NFL start against the Chicago Bears. He threw like 2 or 3 interceptions. I believe 2 of those were like for pick sixes. So things like that do happen in really good NFL quarterbacks' first game in the league. So I could see maybe if you want to roll the dice. I'm personally not going to roll the dice because I think the Jaguars have enough on that offense to be effective this year. If you want my feelings on that Jaguars offense, I actually already did their preview video. So please go check that out if you haven't yet. But yeah, I'm not drafting them to stream on week 1. And yeah, so if anybody's unaware, the reason why I'm saying that, I stream all my defenses every year. And then when I draft them based on their week 1 matchup in redraft leagues. And yeah, that's basically my feelings on the Houston Texans. I think this team, it's gonna be a very rough year for this team because, like I mentioned, I'm under the assumption that Deshaun Watson won't be playing for the Texans, whether it's through a suspension or whether he's on a new team at some point this year. And I just think they're going to have a lot of struggles on that offense. I really don't see them being an efficient offense. I think they're going to be off the field more times than not. And then I think their defense, it's got some guys in there, but it doesn't have enough. And I think because of their offense's lack of ability, I think, to stay on the field, I think that defense is going to get worn out throughout games. And then with no depth behind them, if the injuries start to pile behind them by week 8, they're just going to get picked apart throughout the year. I'm sorry, Houston Texans fans. Don't blame here. I know I got the cold sign right there. Don't. This is not me being biased at all. This is just the fact that you guys are going to have a really bad year without Deshaun Watson. Listen, you put Deshaun Watson on this team, I always think you're going to be competitive with that dude. So if things do change, I definitely would have a change of heart on the Texans heading into the year. Like I mentioned, I'm doing these team season previews. If anything were to change with the Texans, like Houston getting Deshaun Watson back or anything like that, I'll hop on and do a quick update video on them. But other than that, that's my video for the Texans. So I do want to thank everybody for watching this all today. I do want to thank people for tuning in. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so you know when my latest video updates are coming in. And then if you can, maybe go tell a friend if you like what you hear. Maybe I can start to really grow this thing faster, sooner than later. That should be the saying. But yeah, again, thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to follow me, my follow is at Cody Talks NFL on Twitter. Feel free to reach out about fantasy football questions, NFL questions, or if you just want to chat. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. My next video will be the Atlanta Falcons, and I do plan on having that out tomorrow. Like I mentioned in the previous videos, trying to pump out as many as I can before my friends visit here next week. So talk to you guys later. When I do the Falcons, you enjoy the rest of your Sunday or whatever day you're watching this on. Later.